Using different phone systems and devices to manage your practice is a headache. Open Phone makes it simple with a single app that brings your business calls, texts, and contacts into a single place across all your devices. Activate your 7-day free trial and get 20% off your first 6 months when you sign up at openphone.com/Joe. Again, that's openphone.com/Joe. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanak, session number 1025. I'm Joe Sanak, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today. We have so many big things that are coming up in the future, and I want you to save the dates for a few different things. We have the Mental Health Marketing Conference that we are joining. I'm going to be the keynote speaker there on Thursday, October 3rd, doing the closing keynote. As well on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing some workshop trainings, and we are actually sponsoring the entire clinical workshop track. And so if you want to join us, if you want to meet up in person down in Franklin, Tennessee, which is just south of Nashville, just head on over to mhmarketing.org. And if you use promo code Joe at checkout, you're going to get 25% off your ticket. As well, we have the Level Up Week, which is coming September 16th through 19th. And you can register for that over at practiceofthepractice.com/level up. We have over 16 webinars we're going to be doing in 1 week. We're going to be doing panels, trainings, all sorts of things to help you take your practice to the next level. So again, that's Level Up Week, September 16th through 19th. That's in just a little bit here. I am so excited to talk with Liz Fernandez, who is an eldest daughter of farm working and immigrant parents, a marriage family therapist turned multi-six-figure business coach for therapists and coaches. And she's the founder of Therapist to Coach Collective and podcast host of Beyond Private Practice. She's on a mission to help Latina therapists and coaches double their income with coaching and scale beyond private practice after that. Liz, welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Joe. I'm very excited for today's conversation. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Yeah, well, I love that you put your family history in there. It's interesting because it's like when I wrote Thursday is the New Friday, I really got to dig into a little bit of my family history of Polish immigrants, and that was like my great grandparents, and like learning about just how hard my parents had to work and how hard my grandparents had to work, and that's informed a lot of just who I am as a person without even realizing it. For you, you put that in your intro. Um, that seems like having a farm working immigrant parents all the way to a multi six figure business coach. Um, how does that affect your way that you enter into the business world? How does that inform who you are as a business coach?
This is such a good question. And the reason why I always, start with that in part of my story is because it's a huge part of my why in starting as a therapist and entrepreneur in coaching. Specifically, it informs the work that I do by the fact that my parents sacrificed a lot to go to the United States as undocumented immigrants at the time. And they did everything for me to have a better future. And so the fact that, I didn't necessarily come from a background of, entrepreneurs, well, they were definitely entrepreneurs in their own way, right? They just didn't call it that. For them, it was surviving at the time. And so me really coming from this background really helps me just really go the unconventional route in a lot of areas of my life. And so really using my story fuels the work that I do because I serve a lot of people of color that come from similar backgrounds and just people in general, right? And so the work that my parents did, the things that they sacrificed, really put me on a place where they always held education to a high regard, and they told me, that's the only thing we're ever going to leave you. And so me starting this other path, although it was very controversial and not the traditional route that they would have expected, it brought me on a beautiful journey to just create a ripple effect for other people that have a similar background, that might experience self-doubt and just worry around like, can I be a good business owner, or can I run, in your case, the work that you do, a group practice and manage a team, and be an entrepreneur and work for myself. And so that's how my story has really impacted the work that I do. It really just them being my biggest motivators and the people that I serve.
Yeah, it is. It's so interesting how like that generation of parents, has no idea kind of what it looks like to make a career like you and I are making a career. I remember when I was leaving my full-time job at the community college, which was one of the higher paying counseling jobs in the area, had a state pension, all these sorts of things. And my dad was a school psychologist. My mom was a school nurse. They had pretty much always worked for other people. And they pushed back a lot on the idea of me even going on my own. And it wasn't until I said, here's how much money I'm making in this side gig counseling practice. And if I work more than 10 hours a week, imagine what I could do, that they even kind of stopped pushing back. Like they just wanted, their son to do well in life. They didn't want me to struggle, but they had no clue what this world of like podcasting and entrepreneurship looked like. And it tapped into, I think, a lot of those kind of myths that a lot of people have. Now, were there mindsets or myths that you had to personally sort through, or that you see your consulting clients have to sort through when it comes to growing not just their practice, but even beyond their practice?
Absolutely. And I actually also worked for community college myself before I left my 9 to 5. So we definitely have a similar path there.
Yeah.
And yeah, in terms of mindset, I would say the biggest thing for me was my self concept, right? Really identifying as a business owner and entrepreneur. That felt like something that was very, very foreign, especially when, we are trained to go in one direct route and to work for the public system and everything in between. And so for me it was really the fear of, can I call myself a business owner, feeling like an imposter because of having no previous business background, but also really sitting with the what are people going to think, what are my colleagues going to think, right? Because I decided to go on this path when I was in my second year of grad school. So I still hadn't even finished my, my grad school or my hours or became licensed, right? So I did all of this work as an associate. I created a multi six figure company as an associate marriage family therapist. And so for me, now looking back, I sometimes it blows my mind to see that and how that happened and unfolded, right? Because my whole vision was I was going to start a private practice. And so it was really the identity piece of identifying as a business owner, the imposter syndrome that I felt. And then what are people going to think? Not only my parents and my family members, but also my colleagues that, were on track to get licensed and to make a full career out of therapy.
Mm. Now, when you think about kind of that early stage leaving doing private practice and doing more coaching, because that's more your specialty area of really helping people to launch beyond their practice. What were things that you dipped your toes into in regards to what coaching looked like or entrepreneurship beyond the private practice?
Yeah, so I started a group coaching program at the time. I initially imagined that I was going to start a personal brand for therapy work because my whole plan was that I would, go into therapy and go into the private practice route. And I figured if I start now, if I start this online presence now, maybe by the time I graduate and get licensed and, the whole track, I will have this long list of people that want to work with me. And quickly I realized I was introduced to coaching and I started a group coaching program during the pandemic. And this group coaching program blew up. I was specializing in working with Latinas, postgraduate school that wanted to just live healthier, more present, authentic lives. And through this experience I realized that these women that I was serving really wanted to do what I was doing because they were all somehow on track for licensing and being in therapy as well. And so I realized there was a gap of you know um, just information for people in the field in terms of how to work for yourself even before you actually got licensed. So I tapped into coaching there, and my business blew up during the pandemic. Everyone was craving was community, being seen, being heard, really sitting with deep emotions that a lot of people were not sitting with prior to. the pandemic coming. And so that is essentially what opened the doors for me to see what the possibilities were for, within coaching with my background. And that led to what is now the Therapist to Coach Collective, which is, my signature group program where I support therapists that are exploring things outside of private practice, whether that is starting memberships or starting individual high ticket one-on-one coaching or group programs or podcasting even as therapists. So that is really what opened the world for me in coaching.
Mm. Now, I know some people will kind of start the program first, other people will build the audience first. What kind of order did you do things, and what was most helpful to attract people when you were launching these programs?
I started with just nurturing my community and sharing content that I was very passionate about. At the time, I had no niche and I was very naive. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just really posting for the sake of posting information out there. And it really started with doing that and nurturing my community for about 4 to 5 months without ever pitching anything, because I was terrified of pitching anything, right? And so at this time, after I nurtured my audience is when I finally announced that I would have this 6 week group coaching program. And I had like over 40 applications that came in. And so it was through that process that I realized, that wow, there is a huge need here. People really need this. And that is essentially what the path was. So I started with nurturing my community, then having these group programs. And then I eventually left my 9 to 5 within the first year, actually, of my full 12 months as a coach and grad school student at the time. And it just lined up perfectly to the date that I was graduating from grad school, that I decided to also quit my 9 to 5 job at the time. And through this process, I realized, right, again, the huge opportunities that were there present for me. If I now had options, right? And so through that, now that's really what I do. I started my podcast as well. And so that was really the avenue that I took.
Yeah. How have you found the podcast to be? Like, what have you enjoyed about it? What's been more challenging? Like, how'd you figure out kind of what your voice was going to be like in the podcast?
I will say that it was very helpful to have worked with actual clients previous to launching the podcast. The fact that I now understood what my niche was or is, what my pillars and things that I'm passionate of talking about are, it really supported me in identifying what I wanted the podcast to be about. The podcast initially started 2 years ago, actually. 2 years ago exactly. It launched and I started as a Latina CEO identity podcast. So I spoke a lot about, what it meant to be the CEO of your life and, the work that you do as, a business owner and seeing yourself in this whole concept of being a business owner as a Latina. And then as, my clientele grew, I expanded beyond only working with Latinas, and I decided to rename and rebrand the podcast to Beyond Private Practice, which is what it is now. So I will say that working with clients and really, really conducting data and research right over the course of the last 4 years is what has allowed me to create a podcast that is very specific to this niche and to this group of people that I serve, to bring this information and present that to them in a way that they can find it simple, possible, and feasible for them to implement.
Yeah. As a therapist, I can tell you from experience that having the right EHR is an absolute lifeline. I recommend using therapy notes. They make billing, scheduling, note taking, telehealth, and e prescribe incredibly easy. Best of all, they offer live telephone support that's available 7 days a week. You don't have to take my word for it. Do your own research and see for yourself. Therapy Notes is the number one highest rated EHR system available today, with a 4.9 out of 5 stars on trustpilot.com and on Google. All you have to do is click the link below or type promo code Joe on their website over at therapynotes.com. and receive a special 2-month trial absolutely free. Again, that's therapynotes.com and use promo code Joe on the website. If you're coming from another EHR, Therapy Notes will also import your demographic data quick and easy at no cost, so you can get started right away. Trust me, don't waste any more of your time and try Therapy Notes. Just use promo code Joe at checkout. What are you doing October 1st through 3rd? I want to hang out with you just south of Nashville, Tennessee, down in Franklin. I'm going to be keynoting the Mental Health Marketing Conference, and I would love for you to be there. We are also sponsoring the clinical track, where there are going to be tons of amazing trainings, all for you in private practice. This is the national gathering for marketers and clinicians in mental and behavioral health. You're not going to want to miss this awesome conference. It's the one conference I'm keynoting this year, and you can read more over at mhmarketing.org. Also, Steve over at Mental Health Marketing has given 25% off to any Practice of the Practice listeners that want to come to this. Whether you're coming in person or online, you're going to want to use promo code Joe at checkout to get 25% off. I would love for you to come in person for my closing keynote on Thursday, October 3rd at the Mental Health Marketing Conference. But if you can come online, that works as well. Can't wait to hang out with you in Tennessee. Again, that's mhmarketing.org and use promo code Joe at checkout to hang out with me October 1st through 3rd, 2024. Now, as you think about the podcast, like, how do you find inspiration on that show? What, because I mean, when you're making content regularly, you've got to figure out, like, is it certain guests? Is it my own perspective? Like, what is it that you kind of do to find inspiration and curiosity in the show?
I think a lot about my clients. When I am thinking about episodes, I think about the challenges that they are experiencing, the worries, the fears, the things that are getting in their way. So the podcast is a mixture of actionable tips that they implement to support them, mini trainings where they can have perspective shifts. And my clients really are the ones who inspire me to create this content. Also, potential clients, right, that share with me in consultation calls, how they're feeling, their worries, their fears. I really drive a lot of the creativity that I have by just sitting and really thinking about how I can help my clients solve their problems easier and simpler. And so they're the ones that mainly inform, my creativity process. And when I do bring on guests, I like to bring in guests that, have stories to share that are going to help other people like really see themselves in. So that's really where the inspiration comes from.
Mm. Now, what are trends that you're seeing in people going from being a therapist to being a coach or building things outside of their counseling practice?
One of the biggest trends that I see is that when therapists are considering adding coaching, there's a lot of thoughts that they have around calling themselves a coach, right? Because a lot of the therapists I serve range between it being early stage therapists and very, very experienced therapists that have been in the industry for a while. And so for them, it's almost like this identity, just the resistance they have around the identity and calling themselves a coach. They feel like they are going to be unqualified, right? Or they also feel like they have to go get a certification for them to be able to call themselves coaches. A lot of them also, don't want to call themselves a coach because they don't think it's as credible. So a lot of the work that I see that they really have to work through is the identity piece of calling themselves a coach. And I would say that that is one of the biggest areas. I think a lot of people don't have the information of how they can add coaching to their practice, right? Another thing that I see is them assuming that it's either private practice or coaching. So a lot of the work that I do is just work to demystify, right? And really help them see how it can amplify just their streams of income and help them expand to just serve a larger piece of the world, right? Uh, that does not have, limitations according to the state that you're practicing in. And so those are two of the biggest just trends that I find come up for therapists that are considering, adding coaching to the work that they do.
Mm. Yeah, what are some first steps people can take? So, imagine there's a therapist, whether they're a group practice owner or solo practice owner, and they're ready to step into doing more coaching, doing things outside of the practice. Like, what should they evaluate about their skill set? How should they start making connections, finding some of those first clients? What would be some of those first steps you'd recommend?
I would recommend getting just very clear on their niche and who it is that they absolutely love helping, right? As therapists, we are trained to be generalists for the most part. And so it's very common that we know how to help everyone. And part of the first step is really just identifying the one population they feel energized by serving. This doesn't mean they're going to leave people outright because they are still serving a general population in their practices. So within coaching, I always have clients start with just identifying who it is that they want to serve within coaching, get very specific as to what is that outcome that they're going to support them with. This doesn't mean that they're not going to accept any other coaching clients, right? But it is going to be very important for them to actually market and say that they are offering this additional service. I will also say to just get more familiar with the process of actually talking about that coaching service, right, and adapting their consultation calls to that, because I find that within therapy consultations are a lot shorter, right, because the investment looks very different. For coaching, typically it's a higher ticket price that people are paying, and the business model is very different, where people are usually paying for a package versus session by session. And so what I offer is that you just allow for more time in the consultation to really answer any questions that the client might have. And I offer too that if anyone is having an identity, you know, identity resistance around just calling themselves a coach, that they really lean into how this is supporting them in really just helping a larger population and creating more impact. So the simplest steps are just getting clear with who it is that you're helping, and really adapting how it is that you bring clients into the work that you do, through the consultation piece. Other than that, it's really just letting people know, hey, I have this service, marketing it, actually telling people that there is another option. And if they're already working in private practice, I'm sure that some therapists have clients that come to them, right, that aren't necessarily that would actually benefit more from coaching, right, if they're looking for more solution oriented work. And so that could always be a great way to really funnel in clients to coaching rather than actual private practice, if they see that that's the best fit. So those are some of the most tangible things that I would have a therapist start with.
Yeah. And then once they get going, kind of what's the ongoing maintenance of coaching, the ongoing networking? What's that look like for you?
It's actually very simple. The biggest thing that a therapist needs to focus on and is really just ethically marketing their services, right? And whether this looks like uh, posting on social media, right? And growing and marketing that service on social media, on LinkedIn. Just I have clients just start with one platform that they're going to be marketing on. And if it looks like, them going and doing in person, if that's the personal preference that, the therapist has, then I just say that they introduce themselves as both a therapist and a coach wherever they go, so that people know them as someone that offers both services. And it does take just constant letting people know, right? Letting your community know, and marketing yourself on one platform now that everything's mainly remote. This will also expand your opportunities of serving people beyond, the state guidelines that you are practicing in.
So, what are some of the downsides to coaching, or some of the areas that either you or some of your consulting clients or coaching clients have found to be either more of a struggle than you expected, or just a little more difficult than maybe you expected?
I often see that it's the marketing piece, actually actively marketing that you have that service. I find it's the hardest, especially because as therapists that, were trained to work for, community mental health or just in the public sector, or for someone at least, right? And you receive this background in this training where you are used to receiving clients and someone giving you your caseload. So when it comes to actually going and like networking, right? And attracting clients and marketing the work that you do, I find that it can be very passive. It can be a challenge. And this gets in the way of you actually attracting the clients. I find that the clients that usually have a harder time with, filling their coaching caseload are clients that have a lot of resistance around being seen, being heard, and marketing their services actively. And I find that common thread not only within their coaching, services, but also within their private practice services. So I would say that that's the biggest challenge. You can have the coaching offer, you can know who you want to serve, you can be very, very good at the work that you do, yet still not have coaching clients if you're not letting people know that this is a service you're providing.
Mm. Well, the last question I always ask is if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
If the vision is in you, it is for you. And the opportunities of you growing your career as a private practice owner, therapist, are absolutely endless. Uh, we are in a time and place in our world where we have so many tools to expand our reach. And if that vision is in you, it's for you.
So awesome. Liz, if people want to connect with you, if they want to read more about you or listen to your podcast, where should we send them?
You can find me at the Liz Fernandez on Instagram. My podcast is the Beyond Private Practice podcast. You can find me on any podcast platform and head over to my website at thelizfernandez.com//podcast. I'm sure Joe will have all the links for you in the show notes. But yeah, that's where you can find me. And you can also sign up for my free guide that I do have on my website as well at www.thelizfernandez.com /email. That's where you can find the free guide that I do have if you are someone that is considering going from therapist to coach or adding coaching to the work that you do.
Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Joe.
Well, whether you are just adding a little bit of coaching to your practice, or maybe you want to make a full turn out of private practice, man, there is so much in the world that needs your intelligence, your skills, your know-how. One example I often use is just think about just crisis management. How many businesses need help with crisis management? So it could be businesses, it could be individuals, it could be so many different things in your community. So really exciting to hear this kind of content from Liz. Also, if you are going to be around or want to fly into Franklin, Tennessee, you'll fly into Nashville October 1st through 3rd. I'm going to be hanging out there at the Mental Health Marketing Conference. I can't wait to go to the national gathering for marketers in mental and behavioral health. There's a whole clinical track the practice is sponsoring. Also, I'll be doing the closing keynote on Thursday and then doing a clinician workshop on Wednesday. So if you want to hang out around Nashville, October 1st through 3rd, that would be so awesome to hang out with you over at the Mental Health Marketing Conference. And we could not do this show without our amazing sponsors. And today's sponsor is Therapy Notes, the best electronic health record out there. You're going to get some free months if you just use promo code Joe at checkout. They'll also help switch everything over from your current provider. They have real people you can talk to that can help with that transition. They're amazing. Again, that's therapynotes.com. Use promo code Joe at checkout. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.